Madam Chair and everybody in the room for your time today. My name is Bernadette Bissell and I'm the Director of Growth and Development for the National Cybersecurity Center located
questions.
Madam Chair, and I know the last gentleman answered this question, so I was going to reach the end and ask it, just to take up time, but if you could also answer the question I'm going to ask everyone, as far as like the job percentage, the job placement percentage that you have with the cybersecurity program, like how many people are actually getting jobs with that security code degree, and see how it would be success of it.
Director Mizzo.
absolutely. So for the National Cybersecurity Center, as we were providing adult education certifications, we were able to track probably about a 20% success rate straight from certification to actual industry positions. So 20% success rate is what we reported for our adult education.
Are there any other questions for the universities? Yes.
Madam Chair.
Senator.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have a question, just comments to the people who are online here, is that the National Cybersecurity Center is in my district. And I've been in the facility probably 3 or 4 times. It is a magnificent facility, and I know they're doing great work there. And yeah, they're doing an excellent job, and wish them much success. And hope we can find the necessary funds so that they can continue to grow like everybody else.
Thank you, Senator Kristen. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I was just thanking the senator as well. Thank you.
Okay, so last chance to ask questions for the universities. Okay, yes.
Now, we actually have a wrap-up slide that,
Okay, yes.
Dean Borrego's gonna take.
As all my colleagues have stated, we are absolutely wonderfully grateful for all of the funding support. It's allowed us to build phenomenal programs and support students across the state. But collectively, we also want to express concerns with losing some of the funding, especially with obviously changes in state and federal funding for higher education. Several institutions are changing their budget models, which also puts into question some of our sustained longevity of the programs we've built because of these changes. And so we're just kind of facing what we know everybody is facing, new strategies to support students among the fund shifts, and also realizing the very challenging decisions students across the state are about to have to make in terms of what they're doing with their lives. And so we might lead to reduce course loads or even temporary stops in enrollment across all of our institutions, and which we know is not just an issue for higher education in our institutions, but also thinking about when we're trying to fill these workforce gaps, seeing as cybersecurity has about 20,000 positions in the state of Colorado. And so we know that this is just a challenge overall, and again, want to reiterate our express our gratitude for everything, but also have these collective concerns on what the next several years look like.
Yeah, thank you all so much. We have to do these cuts, so what can we say? Everybody has to share in the pain. But thank you for the work that you do and for educating our next generation of IT and cybersecurity workers. With that, we're going to do a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll jump into the departments. I'll do about like a 10-minute break. You'll be back here at 2:53. Thank you.
So if you're just tuning in and you want to hang out here live with us, we're going to be here for a little bit. We're at the Joint Business, Labor, and Technology Committee here at the Colorado State Capitol.
That'll be another one that we spend all night.
So we're in a quick recess here at the Joint Business, Labor, and Technology Committee at the Colorado State Capitol. Stay tuned with us, and we're going to be hanging out.
Cara, you got it, right? Yeah.
Here's where it all went down the last couple of years. Good old Supreme Court. And if you go back and watch one of our videos, this is where we almost got kicked out for filming from a window. In this very hall right here, they called the police on us. But then the Secretary of the Senate, who we had already spoke with, came to save the day, and everything worked out. So we're about to go back in here. Just a pretty calm first day here at the Colorado State Capitol. We're in the old library, and this is beautiful room, beautiful architecture here. But it's just one of those regular meetings today, nothing too crazy, nothing too controversial, but nonetheless interesting, especially if you live in Colorado. So stay tuned, we're just hanging out. We're gonna keep this running so you can see things from a different angle. We are at the Colorado State Capitol here in Colorado. Right here you have all the representatives that are on the Joint Business, Labor, and Technology Committee. So it's first day of session here at the Colorado State Capitol, and we're just going to be sticking around to kind of listen in, see who we can talk to, see what they have to say. Stay tuned.
We're going to start back up, and I know some of our senators are going to be joining us shortly. Before us, we have the Office of DORA, Department of Regulatory Agencies. And we're going to start with an update with the Public Utilities Commissions on the state of 911. Who wants to begin?
I'll go ahead and kick us off, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Patty Salazar. I'm the Executive Director of the Department of Regulatory Agencies. If it's okay with you, Madam Chair, we're actually going to do the state of 911 at the very end of our presentation, since that's how our slide deck is composed.
Sure.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Director Salazar.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, it's my pleasure to be before you here today to present what will be my 8th Smart Act presentation to you all. I will again start off with a brief overview of our agency and then hand it off to Jennifer Kirkland, who's to my right, to provide the state of 911. We've also provided to you an appendix with statutory required information, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have related to anything in our presentation and or the appendix. So I'll go ahead and start off with our overall mission and vision at the department. As the Department of Regulatory Agencies, we are the state's consumer protection agency and state's umbrella regulatory authority. Our core mission is to protect consumers while ensuring that businesses are able to thrive, and we aim to regulate the least burdensome level possible. As a principal agency, we are comprised of 10 statutory divisions. I will go through them very briefly, but those include the divisions of banking, civil rights, conservation, financial services, insurance, real estate, professions and occupations, securities, Office of Utility Consumer Advocate, and the Public Utilities Commission. The Executive Director's Office handles the department's core administrative functions and also houses our Office of Policy Research and Regulatory Reform, which is responsible to conduct state sunrise and sunset reports. While we administer more than 50 regulatory programs, we're a fairly modest-sized agency with just over 730 FTE. We also administer more than 50 boards, commissions, advisory committees, and task forces that comprise of more than 400 appointees to fulfill our statutory charge to regulate more than 1.1 million individuals and more than 82,000 businesses and institutions. As you can see, the depth and breadth of what DORA oversees is rather substantial, and I won't read everything on these slides. The general categories do include financial services, real estate, insurance, transportation, investor-owned utilities, and professions in the wealth and wellness industry, excuse me, it's been a long day, as well as other trades. With respect to our performance management philosophy, we try to focus on a results-driven approach to ensure that we are able to engage staff at all levels and maximize operational efficiency and effectiveness by leveraging our dedicated and experienced staff's expertise and evidence-based knowledge. We also use tools such as alternative dispute resolution and mediated settlements to expedite our complaints to resolve those quickly, as again, we are the state's consumer protection agency, to help us fill our mission and also remain fiscally responsible. So 2 of our wildly important goals that are highlighted on the governor's dashboard are shown here. I'm actually going to start with the second one first. The Public Utilities Commission has launched the Colorado Energy Savings Navigator to increase access to energy assistance programs, and this was done in partnership with the Colorado Energy Office, OAT, and other community partners such as Gary Community Ventures and Rewiring America. This portal is essentially a single centralized resource, and for the first time, Coloradans can visit this place and find ways to save money on their energy cost. It's consolidated, and so we basically have consolidated all the energy assistance programs into the single portal to help identify rebates for home appliances, weatherization, electrical vehicles. So far to date, we have around 3,500 visitors going to our website, and we're aiming to get closer to 10,000, and we're hoping to also increase the number of individuals that are applying for reset programs. The other wildly important goal that we have on the governor's dashboard is related to reducing the average licensing times for individuals that are seeking an occupational license. This has been something that has been a long-standing goal of ours, and our goal is to minimize the application timelines to 15 days by June of 2027. Go to the next slide. So this has been, again, a long-standing goal. I've actually been with the department now for 11 years, and this snapshot you'll see takes us all the way back to 2017 and shows that we have drastically have reduced the average licensing times from 129 days back in 2017 to 17 days now, and again, we're making that goal to be closer to 15 days. And we have achieved this through a variety of different methods, including establishing a special operations team, implementing rule changes, and updating our delegation policies, again, all while balancing our mission of protecting consumers. You can find more information on the governor's well important goals and our agency goals on this website, which also includes our corresponding measures and other information about our goals. As the JVC had presented earlier, this is our budget request for the upcoming fiscal year. As was noted, we are primarily cash-funded agency, and our total funding request is just short of $145 million, with a general fund request of just over $3 million, as was noted by the JVC, which is used to support the Civil Rights Division in their duty to enforce CADA specific to places of public accommodation. And as was also noted earlier, we have submitted a 2.5 general fund reduction. Again, that's really in our alignment to make sure that we are trying to preserve general fund to benefit the state, and is just over $400,000. Jumping over to our legislative agenda, I'm going to highlight 2 bills that we are very excited about to be working with you all in this current session. One is related to the occupational licensure portability and expanding upon that, which was a bill that we had passed in 2019, and building upon that, expanding opportunities that we want to provide to internationally educated professionals by allowing our regulatory boards to consider education experience that is obtained outside the U.S. that is substantially equivalent to Colorado's requirements when evaluating applicants for occupational licensure. This proposal enhances Colorado's portability program by granting the state greater discretion. This initiative positions the state to address critical workforce shortages in high-demand industries such as healthcare, and helps to ensure that skilled foreign-trained workers can apply their expertise in Colorado while still ensuring that consumers are protected. The next bill is building upon existing mechanisms for regulatory review, more specifically mandatory rule review, which has existed in statute for quite some time now. And also includes a regulatory agenda, regulatory report that I'll be presenting to you later today. We have been partnering with the business community to increase transparency and stakeholder participation in these process over the last few years, and are hoping to build upon that. We have been, again, partnering with the business community to identify ways that we can improve transparency of our current regulatory review process to make it more consistent, transparent, and to provide the General Assembly with more opportunity to thoughtfully determine which programs should be reviewed under the existing sunset review process. I also do want to highlight that there will be 24 sunsets that will be starting in the House this year. While I will not go through them all, I will highlight a few, since they do result in legislative bills. That does include the Public Utilities Commission, the Division of Professions and Occupations, the Division of Real Estate, the Colorado Securities Act, the Combative Sports Commission, and the Barber and Cosmetology Act, a few of these which you will likely see before this committee. When it comes to our regulatory approach, again, we try to regulate to the least burdensome level possible while ensuring that consumers are protected. A couple of the tools that we have in our pocket, as I mentioned earlier, is the sunrise review process, in which we assess whether a currently unregulated profession should be subject to state licensure. And that process can be initiated by anyone, whether it's a trade association or a member of the public. And we then provide that analysis to you all to determine whether or not legislation should be run to create a new regulatory program. Another mechanism is the sunset review process, again, which results in an assessment that is set forth, the criteria set forth in statute, and includes whether regulation is necessary to protect the public health, safety, and welfare, and whether existing statutes establish least restrictive form of government and oversight consistent with public interest, and allows for you all to determine whether or not current regulatory programs should be restructured in the bill to allow for programs to be reauthorized. Another mechanism for regulatory reform, as I mentioned earlier, is mandatory rule review, which each agency is required to assess the continuing need and cost effectiveness of existing rules, and to evaluate other statutorily defined criteria to determine whether they should continue. And this is provided in our agency's regulatory agenda. For this year's DORA regulatory agenda, we have identified 244 rules that require action in the coming fiscal year. 17% of those rules are required to be reviewed under mandatory rule review. We anticipate that 6% of those rules will be repealed, 74% are expected to be revised, and 20% of those are expected to be new rules many resulting from new legislation or ballot measures. Our regulatory agenda was filed with the Secretary of State and legislative staff on November 1st as required by the law, and it is available on the Secretary of State's website as well as on our DORA website. Our agency is also required under the statutes to collect information from our sister principal agencies to report in aggregate an analysis of whether rules have been violated with great frequency and report such non-compliance to you all. Over the past year, 8 agencies have responded and have identified 62 rules showing the highest frequency of non-compliance. When agencies encounter these non-compliance, they have reported that they have increased public outreach and education to help people understand the need for compliance. And lastly, I do want to highlight, in accordance with the Governor's Executive Order 2020-175, the department has added a focus on digital accessibility, including the department's digital resources and on improving the customer experience. Additionally, we continue to focus on our stakeholder engagement plans to ensure that they are inclusive, meaningful, and focused engagement to the respective industries and a variety of community stakeholder groups. With that, I'm happy to take any questions from the committee. Otherwise, I will move on to our statutorily mandated presentations.
Okay, are there questions? I do see Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question on the slide with the 244 rules that were identified to review this year. Just, could you give me a feel, what is the total scope of the rules that you maintain across the department? Are we talking about 10% of them a year, 1% of them a year?
Sure, so
Rebecca Salazar.
thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the question, Representative. So as part of the appendix that you should have received is our regulatory report, and it will have a breakdown of all of those rules by divisions and by programs. I don't want to misspeak on the volume, but it is dozens of pages, and so you can see that it's broken down by the different sectors that we regulate.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to that note, I will also add that I'm always happy to walk anyone through our regulatory report offline. I'm happy to come sit with you so we can also talk about ways to improve the way that we're reporting out to you, since it really is intended to be for the General Assembly's benefit. So with that, I have 2 statutorily required presentations that I will provide. The first related to our Division of Conservation. DORA is required to update the committee on our efforts to improve the conservation easement registry in partnership with COMAPS. This information includes the total number of easements, location and size of the easements, names of the grantor and grantee, and the holder certification status and whether a tax credit was issued. Today I'm reporting that there are currently 800 conservation easements. Since last year, there has been a 7% increase in acres protected in conservation easements. The next report is related to the Public Utilities Commission High Cost Support Mechanism. The High Cost Support Mechanism is a source of additional capital funding for broadband deployment in unserved and underserved areas in Colorado and for certain rural telecommunication providers. The PUC collects funds through a 2.6% surcharge on retail telecommunication consumers and passes them on to other entities to support basic telecommunications and broadband investment. More than $97.3 million has been transferred from the PUC to the Broadband Deployment Board, which is administered by OIT for broadband infrastructure since 2015, and in 2024, the fund was extended indefinitely. If the committee has any questions related to either of those 2 reports, I'm happy to answer or ask my staff to join me in answering. Otherwise, we can move to the state of 911.
Any questions, committee? I don't see any, so please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will now turn the presentation over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Director Salazar, and good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. So my name is Jennifer Kirkland. I'm the State of 911 Program Manager of the Public Utilities Commission, and per statute, the Commission is required to publish an annual State of 911 report in September and present in person to you, and this is the Commission's 8th annual report. Next slide, thank you. So the report itself is pretty extensive, so we pulled out a few key points in the interest of respecting your time. The first point is that the ESNet Users Group, which is a subcommittee of the PUC 911 Advisory Task Force and consists of representatives of 911 centers throughout the state, continues to plan for future deployment of next generation 911 services, which affects how your 911 calls are delivered to 911 centers, the performance of that ESNet and ESNet service disruptions. We also have commission staff, members of the ESNet Users Group, and the Colorado Council of Authorities have significant concerns regarding the customer service that 911 centers and governing bodies are receiving from CenturyLink, who's also doing business as Lumen Technologies. And while we recognize 911 professionals in the state are public safety's first responders, thank you, and perform incredible work every day, we want to highlight that Colorado is one of only a few states with no minimum operational or training standards for 911 call centers. However, I'm happy to report to you today that progress has been made in this area at both the national level and by Colorado's stakeholders. Next slide. This slide has been updated from the written report that was provided to you, and that's because of the difference that happened between September when the report was published and today. We did have a total of 14 PSAP service disruptions. These are instances in when 911 service was disrupted and 911 centers were unable to take their 911 calls. So we did have a significant drop from 2024 to 2025, which is great. We had the average duration rise slightly from 2024 to 2025, and that is because of the difference in the cause of those disruptions. We had more disruptions in 2025 that were the result of fiber cuts, which generally take longer to repair than, say, a system outage where they can replace a card or some other service at the central office. Next slide. Just highlighting some of the challenges that are facing 911 in Colorado. Again, we are experiencing challenges with CenturyLink's customer service in the non-regulated areas of their service to Colorado's 911 centers and governing bodies. We are highlighting the lack of minimum training standards for 911 professionals. And again, I want to highlight that 911 professionals in Colorado are providing excellent service. There just isn't a minimum training standard for those 911 professionals. And similar to the topic in previous hours, there is no clear path toward consistent statewide cybersecurity defense at the 911 centers in Colorado. Next slide. So our recommendations to the legislature this year are actually simple. We want to ask that you monitor the Colorado Training Standards Institute to operationalize the voluntary minimum training standard. The Colorado Training Standard Institute developed a voluntary minimum training standard in conjunction with and in accordance with the national minimum training guidelines for 911 professionals, which should be released later this year. Colorado Training Standard Institute has adopted that as its standard and is working to build a curriculum for 911 professionals to be provided free throughout the state. And we just ask that you monitor those efforts. And we ask that you monitor the activities of 911 centers, governing bodies, and the 911 services enterprise regarding cybersecurity to ensure that sufficient resources are made available in this area. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have. I do have a last slide that has our Colorado 911 program website for you to review. And the PUC website also has more information, and you can access our report on those websites as well.
Okay. Questions about 911 or anything related to DORA? Oh, Representative Super.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my question is on the 911, if you make those standards tougher, it's my understanding that it's hard to fill those positions for 911 operators. Is that true?
Thank you,
Ms. Kirkland?
and thank you, Representative, for the question. So the standard that we're referring to is for training, which is obviously done after the hiring. It does not speak to what qualifications a 911 professional has to be hired. It only puts the onus on the 911 center to train their personnel once they're hired. So, and it's my belief, and it's our work, through our work, it's our belief as the Training Standards Institute that the vast majority of 911 centers are meeting that standard. And we're starting efforts this year to determine what barriers there might be to meeting that voluntary standard so we can start to address those.
Thank you. Any other questions? Red Brooks.
Madam Chair, is this appropriate to be just kind of, I think you said a general DORA question, or is there anything else?
Related to, yeah.
Because I don't have it related to 911, we're just in, you know.
Yeah, related to.
Okay. So, thank you. It's something that I've repeated quite often. In fact, Minority Leader Caldwell mentioned it today in his opening address, that Colorado is the 6th most regulated state in the nation. To me, that's a problem. But then specifically within that though, I've read different reports about 44 or 45% of those regulations are duplicative. Does DORA track any of that and perhaps look at removing any duplicative measures that are within the purview of the department to regulate those, or maybe track some of those particularly burdensome regulations and then kind of alert us to see if there might be some legislative action we need to take in order to try to reduce that stranglehold that we're putting on the local economy.
Director Salazar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative, for that question. I would go back to, actually, pull the slide back up again. One of our legislative agenda items is focusing on addressing just that. Mandatory rule review has been in the statute for quite some years now, and amongst the criteria that rulemaking agencies such as ourselves are required to do is set a schedule upon which we look at our reviews to determine exactly what you're saying, whether they're obsolete, duplicative, either internal to the agency or with other state agencies, even with federal agencies, and to look at the broader impacts that such a rule may have. So what we're looking to do is build upon what already exists, because again, out of that mandatory rule review, that is what is requiring us to then create the regulatory report and regulatory agenda, which are exactly those numbers they just shared with you, but make that more meaningful, not just for the agency, because we're already doing the work when it comes to identifying those rules rather, and counting them, but to make them more transparent and accessible to those that are impacted and to you all as lawmakers to see which programs we really are reviewing on a regular basis, not just within our agency, but across our sister agencies as well. So I would love to talk to you more about our legislative proposal and figure out how we can be more transparent with that. Again, building upon the work that we're already doing as state agencies, but making it more meaningful.
Excellent, thank you, Noah. Happy to have this conversation, so appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions for Dora? Okay, I don't see any, so thank you very much, Director Salazar, for coming today, you and your team, and we'll see you next year. Congratulations. In committee. We're going to call up the Department of Personnel and Administration next. Please come up to make your presentation. Welcome. Who wants to present for EPA?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you for meeting with us. I'm Tony Giardini, Executive Director of the Department of Personnel Administration. I'm joined here today with my Deputy Executive Director, Heather Velasquez, and she will be presenting the slides today. And I think we'll be ready to go as soon as we can get everything logged on and running on the computer.
Okay, you may begin. Thank you.
I apologize, I need to. I think we're good now. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Today, I will begin with a high-level overview of the Department of Personnel and Administration, followed by a review of the department's performance management structure and goals, our current budget requests, legislative and regulatory agendas, an update on Colorado for All initiatives, and finally, an update on our P3 office. DPA is the state's central support agency, and our main focus is helping the state agencies to function as efficiently as possible. Our mission is enabling the success of state government through efficiency, collaboration, and innovation. And our vision is to create a Colorado for all by enabling consistent and seamless delivery of quality government services. And I apologize, I realize my slideshow is not working. There we go. All right. The department supports state government in three primary ways: centralized authority, services, and programs. Our centralized authority is statutorily vested in the department. Here we train and consult with agencies, create regulations, policies, and technical guidance in the areas of human resources through the Division of Human Resources, accounting through the Office of the State Controller, and property through the Office of the State Architect. We provide centralized services and recognize economies of scale to provide infrastructure needed for the state to operate in a consistent and cost-conscious manner. These services include print, mail, scanning, and data processing through the Division of Central Services, facilities and fleet management through the Division of Capital Assets, and financial operations through the Office of the State Controller. DPA also provides some direct services to Coloradans through the Address Confidentiality Program, which provides legal substitute addresses and confidential mail forwarding to survivors of domestic violence and sexual offenses and/or stalking. The Office of Administrative Courts are centralized administrative court systems that adjudicates public benefits, workers' compensation cases, and other administrative law cases, and through the state archives. Here, you'll see the department's organizational chart, including our FTE, approximately 500 total, and our budget breakdown by division. The department consists of 8 divisions and offices, and we also administratively house the State Personnel Board, which is a constitutionally independent entity. Next, I'll share an overview of the department's wildly important goals, or WIGs as we call them. These are our efforts which we've selected as high priority to focus additional time and effort outside of our normal operations to drive meaningful outcomes for the state. The department's WIGs align with our transformational priority categories, which you see here, of workforce of the future and property and infrastructure solutions. We review and report on our department WIGs quarterly as part of our performance management system, which I've now covered. DPA approaches performance management via multiple methods of in-depth data analysis, review, and reporting to make informed collaborative decisions to align our efforts and resources. We review progress towards the accomplishment of our WIGs and report data quarterly via the Governor's Dashboard, which is the public performance management accountability website for the state's executive branch. We also conduct monthly operational performance management review meetings for every department division that we call DPA STAT. These DPA STAT meetings are a performance-based analysis tool that allows us to better focus on and improve performance outcomes. The directors and designees from each department division lead the monthly meetings with DPA leadership team, and we discuss here high-level goals, major projects, and additional operational measures. Through data analysis in these meetings, we can determine what is working and what needs improvement. This collaboration allows for idea generation and problem solving in an efficient, team-oriented environment. Also at DPA, we track major projects via work plans, which track important action items, due dates, and milestones, and we review these work plans bi-weekly via a dashboard to provide a snapshot to ensure that our major projects stay on track. For our widely important goals, our first goal continues our focus on innovations in recruitment and hiring efforts statewide via skills-based hiring. Our goal this year is to increase the number of STAR applicants for eligible state jobs by 5% from last year. The acronym STAR stands for Skilled Through Alternative Routes. STAR applicants are individuals who don't have a bachelor's degree or higher, and while these applicants do not hold a specific degree, they've developed valuable skills through other avenues like on-the-job experience, military service, community college, high school equivalency, and other alternative routes. This goal
maintains our focus on attracting a diverse and talented workforce by expanding upon minimum qualification requirements wherever possible, so we can consider both traditional education and certification as well as practical experience for our state jobs. As of the November 2025 quarterly report, we've seen over 30,000 STAR applicants apply for our state jobs towards our annual goal of nearly 70,000. While this goal has been impacted by a statewide hiring freeze in late 2025, EPA has continued to implement strategies to support the recruitment efforts, which we'll cover now. Here, you can see some of the additional measurements that we track on the governor's public dashboard website to support this goal. The Division of Human Resources has developed and delivered hiring training for appointing authorities and is participating in career informational events and designing a pilot recruitment strategy for 2 of our highest in demand roles in this fiscal year. Our next goal is to continue to reduce the total state leased and owned underutilized space by a total of 1 million square feet by June 30th of 2027. Our focus is to identify underutilized assets, opportunities to use space more efficiently, and to ultimately reduce costs without reducing the quality of service for our state agencies. We have to date reduced 660,776 square feet since January of 2019. This effort adjusts our working spaces to better meet the needs of our workforce, to save taxpayer money, and to support the state's focus on our green government. While the majority of this work focuses on office space, you can also see on the graph here that we're reducing underutilized non-office assets, which can in some instances provide public-private partnership opportunities. Our final goal is the electrification of the state fleet, continuing this effort. Our target is to increase the number of electric vehicles, or EVs, in the state fleet by 1,250 by 2027, and to date we have 866 EVs in the state fleet. Moving on to the department's budget, this slide summarizes DPA's fiscal year 2026-2027 total budget requests. Of note, the majority of our department funding, nearly 80%, are reappropriated funds from other state agencies to which we provide services, and the remainder of our funds are a proportionately smaller share of cash and general funds. In light of the tight budget year this year, EPA is seeking a roughly $492,000 reduction in our operating general funds. Here, you can see a list of our top 3 budget requests for this legislative session. Of note, each of these top 3 requests are for reappropriated funds rather than straight general fund. The first prioritized request is staffing for updated statewide payroll system that we are working hard on. A portion of this request will be offset by a reduction in support costs from the Office of Information Technology for the existing system known as CPPS. These savings will be realized beginning in fiscal year 27-28 and ongoing when CPPS is no longer supported as a backup system. Our next request is for term-limited staffing for the Office of Administrative Courts to maintain federally required processing times for Medicaid cases during a time of a limited surge in appeals that we are working through at this time. And our third prioritized request is for staffing for the state's financial system known as CORE to support continuous improvement efforts. These continuous improvement focuses maintain the system regularly, and this avoids major costly updates on an interim timeline. This request, similar to the first, is offset by reduction in OIT support costs by approximately $850,000. Those savings will be realized in fiscal year 27-28 and ongoing. The department has 1 bill on our legislative agenda this year. The Pathways to Public Service bill is the next step in work-based learning and skills-based hiring to connect candidates to public service careers. The bill creates a program in the Department of Personnel and Administration using existing resources to connect candidates to public service careers. The bill creates a program, and we will work with academic and workforce entities to identify existing curriculum and coursework that will qualify students for work and positions in the state government. Our regulatory agenda for the upcoming year includes changes to the administrative court rules to streamline and bring up to date any needed procedural rules in general services filings and hearings, and procedural rules for workers' compensation filings and hearings. These changes typically typically codify new courtroom and procedural directives from the Colorado Supreme Court and any other changes that may have occurred in state and federal law regarding courtroom procedures. Next, we expect to update the personnel director's procedures. This will will cover compensation rules and update the rules to comport with contemporary practices. Finally, the Office of the State Controller will complete their annual update of state fiscal rules, again to address any technical corrections necessary and to comport with contemporary practices. Next, I'll review DPA's efforts to support a Colorado for All. These highlights center around recruitment, retention, digital accessibility, and community engagement. Our recruitment efforts, as we've discussed, include leading the governor's skills-based hiring initiative, with all eligible job announcements for state government posted in a skills-based format and all current and newly hired supervisors trained in skills-based hiring. We have also continued our partnerships with local organizations such as Mikasa Resource Center, Emily Griffith High School, and technical college campuses in order to proactively recruit diverse talent that represents our communities. Additionally, our communication efforts include the statewide administration of the Colorado Combined Campaign. This is an annual giving campaign where state employees can make charitable donations to nonprofit organizations of their choice straight from their paychecks. In the most recent campaign, state employees pledged over $295,000 to these organizations. At DPA, we also host annual days of service where our department employees have the opportunity to take part in organized volunteer efforts to give back to their community. This program has grown in recent years to include 2 days of opportunities to better accommodate business needs and provide a wider array of opportunities for our community partner organizations across the state where DPA does business. Finally, DPA continues to maintain exceptional digital accessibility scoring on our public websites, and our team contributed to an update of the OIT digital accessibility rules in this past year to improve processes, clarify expectations, and improve the way we deliver digital services to Coloradans. Finally, I would like to provide an update on the Public-Private Partnership Collaboration Unit known as the P3 Office. The P3 Office leads the transformation of unused and underutilized state real estate into valuable assets. P3 projects support behavioral health capacity, affordable housing development, child care services, broadband deployment, and renewable energy. This past year, the office completed a project with the Department of Corrections to expand mental health and broadband access to the Limon and Sterling facilities. The office has 4 additional projects that are currently in progress. These include the Lakewood Complex, which will result in 200 new affordable, attainable housing units, 1 child care facility, and 2 in-home child care centers. The Durango property, which will deliver 150 to 300 new affordable, attainable housing units. The Golden Range redevelopment to provide 300 to 400 affordable, attainable housing units. And the redevelopment of the Governor's Residence parking lot to introduce 65 new affordable, attainable housing units. This concludes our presentation for today. I just want to thank you all again for your time, and Director Viradini and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions, committee? Yes, I see something. Representative Brooks, I see, and then we're gonna go to LT and then Supra.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You had earlier mentioned the consolidation of some of the square footage properties. I think it was some over 600,000 square feet since 2019. Can you quantify that? I believe I remember, could be wrong, but I believe I remember talking about this in these meetings last year. So I'm just curious, do you have a figure for what reduction or consolidation you were able to accomplish just this last year, or what you are projecting to be able to do this year? I appreciate the 2019 figure. I just want to try to narrow that just a little bit, please.
Mr. Master.
Thank you, Representative. Yes, we do have that number. We have an annual target for this goal that we do report on the governor's dashboard. And I don't have the exact number from last year, but what I can say is it typically fluctuates to around 200 to 300,000 square feet per fiscal year. And our target for this current fiscal year that we're in right now, so June 30th of 2027, is 891,279 square feet of reduction. So we've moved from the 660 up to that 879 for this fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. That does not include the governor's parking lot, right? I'm just picking it up. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, Red, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this question is going to be about the part where you're talking about the state's, reduce the state's physical footprint. So the brand board is in the Department of Agriculture right now. The Colorado County Association has offered to lease it out with a $12,000 savings if the brand board was to leave where the Department of Agriculture is and go to the Colorado County Association building. I'm trying to figure this out. When you say reduce the footprint, are we trying to save money? And if so, why would we not let them go ahead and the brand board and move, which they want to do, and move over to the Colorado County Association building?
Ms. Velasquez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative. I can't speak to that specific situation, but would be happy to certainly follow up. We are definitely trying to save money. Generally, our reduction in square footage results in about $19 per square foot of saving for office space. So that would be a little bit different. It sounds like the space you're talking about might not be office space. It may be different use.
So it is office space, and it's actually bigger. However, you save $12,000 by making the move.
Oh, I see. So you're saying it would actually increase the footprint, but would save money.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Again, I can't speak to that exact scenario, but we'll be happy to talk about that because I think you're correct. I mean, the intent is to save money. And so there have been fluctuations as we've worked through this goal. Some years, the ultimate reduction is a net deduction, but there are instances where we fluctuate up and down. And so it's not a hard line of if there's not a square footage reduction, it's a complete no. So they're very nuanced in each situation.
Red County.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You are the department I've been waiting for. So I have a few questions that I had asked the JDC, which they asked that I go ahead and ask you guys. So there were 3 things on here. There were 2, and then there became 3. On the budget briefing highlights that is handed out, and you kind of touched slightly on it here on your slide 10 for the increase of electronic vehicles in Colorado. So R1 was the payroll system, and for me, that was an area of contention because I'd asked last year if we could just hold off. I mean, I'd asked if there's any problems, if there's any viruses, if there's anything issues, going on with the payroll. I understand it's an old system, we get it, but in a budget crisis that the state is actually in right now, I mean, we're in crisis. So where can we cinch up? Where can we just hold off, just hold on to? So with that being said, what was the cost of the actual software update that they went ahead and putting along the last year versus did that include, which I'm thinking it did not, because that's what JDC said, the 9 additional employees you're saying that it's now going to take to run that software program, which I don't understand why it's 9 additional when you already have some running the current one, but in here it says 9 additional, which was not included in the fiscal note. Last year, when we looked at this, and now all of a sudden, yeah, we went ahead and signed on to the software program. Oh, and by the way, now we need 9 more employees, which to me is a little bit devious in my opinion. But nothing you are devious, but in my opinion, it's not right. But so there's that one that was R1, R5. I'll just go down on R5 is the printing services. So with the printing services, they're estimating, again, this is just a brand new year, but they're asking for another $1.1 million in printing services forecasted for 2026. I don't understand why we're having so much more printing in 2026 than we had in 2025, 2024, and that kind of, why are we, at the tune of $1.1 million, that's a lot of printing. So I'd like to understand that. And then for R8, which was the fleet vehicle replacement. So with that one, I would like to know, because they're looking at adding a request placement for 545 vehicles in the state fleet. So, and then of that, they say 326, but according to your calculations, it's actually closer to 400 more electric vehicles that we're adding to the fleet do we have, I mean, does this also include the financial status of this? Is that including setting up the stations, electronic stations, or the charging stations for these? Can the current system handle it? Do we need to add to that? Is that included? If not, is that gonna be another cost that we're gonna find out later once we buy the vehicles? Oh, by the way, we're gonna need more of this, or we need more money. And now we're stuck because we got the vehicles and don't have the charging devices, so now we're in a situation where we gotta do what we gotta do, which we should know ahead of time, forecast ahead of time. So I'm trying to get my head wrapped around all these expenses that are coming up and creeping up on us later, which were left out originally. And again, these are things that we should know ahead of time before we agree to anything. So if you can answer those three, I'd appreciate it.
Ms. Velasquez or Deputy or Director?
Thank you. So certainly a lot of questions, obviously, and a lot of information. So I think we'll certainly follow up in writing as well. On these, I'll give you kind of the high-level answers. It sounds like you want a lot of details kind of associated with these. So on the first one, with core staffing, it's important to note that we're not asking for new general funds with those. Very much to the point of your question, the funding that we're requesting is actually offset from the decommissioning. So as you point out, the system is going offline. Because that's not going to cost us funding anymore, we're asking that those funds be applied to the new system. The new system is actually going to result in an ongoing year savings of about $76,000. And that's where these savings are coming from for these FTE. Yeah, I think your next question was, I'm sorry.
The next question for printing.
Okay, and printing, and I think Heather can answer that question.
Ms. Velasquez?
Madam Chair, thank you, Representative. For R5, for the printing, this one is actually a spending authority for the existing reappropriated funds. So the way that our printing functions within this division is that the printing costs are generally lower to print in-house through our state print shop than if you're going outside to like Office Max or something like that. If for some reason it's not, we have a waiver process. So this is spending authority for the funding in our fee schedule that we're sort of already charging. It's not an actual addition requesting for funds, just spending authority for those funds.
Okay, Director Giordano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And also point out, Representative Kelty, that the fluctuation oftentimes has a lot to do with organizations outside the state's control. So the state print shop is responsible for printing anything from any state and local government that has a contract with the state. As my colleague mentioned, it comes at a lower cost to government to work through the state print shop. But for instance, when we see large scale changes to like Medicaid or certain requirements that require the federal government, we at DPA and our print shop are responsible for printing those documents and making sure they get sent out to the mail on time in service to the departments that kind of the touch points, so maybe county or state departments. And so year over year, you can notice fluctuations up and down depending on kind of external factors like that on occasion. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure I recall all the details about your fleet vehicle question, but I think the overarching question was if we're planning for the necessary infrastructure associated with adding fleet vehicles to the fleet, specifically EVs and their charging needs.
Not just plan for it, does it exist right now to handle the new fleet that you're looking at adding? And if not, does the current ask that you have in here include that, the increase of charging units that are going to be required for that for hundreds of vehicles? So do we already have the infrastructure? If not, is that amount to add that to the infrastructure included in the ask that you're having now? And if not, then why not?
Director Giordano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative. So right now, the funding line of the statute that enables the funding line to purchase vehicles doesn't have the ability for us to charge the addition of new charging to that particular funding line. So when you see the budget request come through in the fleet, it's restricted statutorily in what we can spend the funds in that request on. So we're only allowed to ask for funds to be sent to this fund for instance, the purchase of new vehicles. So any request for additional charging infrastructure will come in the form of a separate request or in the form of bills. The vehicles that we're looking at bringing into the fleet right now will have the ability to be charged based on the existing state infrastructure. However, if we do want to move to a scenario in which we're requesting vehicles and charging infrastructure at the same time in the same budget request, we'll need to change the allowance in that fund statutorily or submit a separate discrete request. We didn't submit a separate discrete request this time because the vehicles that we're looking to add have the infrastructure that we need right now to be able to charge those.
Representative Kelsey.
So, just so I understand what you're saying is, we don't have infrastructure for the 400 vehicles.
No, that's not,
And
it's the opposite.
So, okay, so if you can explain that to me, because for me, if it's not included, if we're gonna add these many vehicles to our fleet, we don't have the means to actually get them, to charge them, to be able to utilize them. Is that gonna be another expense, unintended expense that we're gonna be seeing later on, going, oh, by the way, we need more money down the road because we added these vehicles that we couldn't afford to begin with, but now we're gonna add these to our budget, and now we need to charge them, so now we need even more money. I'm trying to cut the bleed, right? So we're bleeding as a state, just outright financially. So I'm trying to figure out if these vehicles do come into the force, the fleet force, how much more realistically, in the overall picture, is that going to cost the state of Colorado? Because we already don't have the money. So is this something, in my mind, that we can just hold off on and cut right now, just hold off on until we do have the money, or at least leak it in somehow instead of doing this lump, this large, fleet purchase?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Kelly. Yeah, certainly, the JDC can certainly choose to not fund the fleet request or fund a portion of it in order to reduce the cost. I think that's probably an action that's taken place in the past. And of course, as we continue to add EVs to the fleet, there's absolutely the need for fueling and an increased expenditure on infrastructure. Keep in mind too that the offsets that we see come in the form also of us not spending money on the annual fuel appropriation and not selling necessarily in the same vein as maintenance, because it's a lower requirement for maintenance for these electronic vehicles that come into the fleet. So there's certainly an offset. As far as the numbers are concerned, I certainly don't have them with me today, but we're happy to have further conversation if you'd like to kind of really dig in with some kind of the projections and what we're thinking as far as how to meet the EV charging need of infrastructure.
Thank you, Director. Are there any other questions from any members of the committee? Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we had the audit department that came here earlier, and they had talked about you had some 6, I believe, was things that they'd asked you to do, and you were 40 months in arrears. And so, as a legislator, why would I want to approve your budget if you are 40 months in arrears on your audit? Can you explain why it's taking so long to meet those requirements?
Director Giordano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative, I'm not sure exactly which audit funding you're specifically referring to. There's one that sticks out in my mind that is certainly a long-lasting one, and one that we don't necessarily have a mechanism if we're thinking of the same one. It's the year-end close audit funding. And so the year-end close, and by all means, please stop me if that's maybe not the one you're thinking of, but the year-end close essentially is a statutory requirement for all agencies to close their financial books by August every year to make sure that everything's wrapped up in time for federal close, which comes in October. And we've had conversations with the OSA that from our perspective, and I think from the state executive branch perspective, the solution to that would have to include a statutory change on that particular deadline. And the reason is because every year, and this is just the auditing standards that come down from GASB, is they always add more and new additional standards to GASB, which means that to get officially closed and a certified close, it takes more time and more work. And a lot of times, agencies that we work with, aren't able to close their books in time to meet that audit finding. And so we're kind of stuck in a place where we said, we are happy to work with you, we're going to have a new due date to achieve that, but we would need somebody to kind of support a statutory change. The OSA has advised against that in the past, and so on. If that's what we're talking about, that's what I think we're trying to rock.
So it was the physical year ending in June, and it said that, so the financial reporting and it was delayed by 40 months.
Director Giordano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative. That's the same finding that we're referring to, though. They say year-end close for the books of the state.
So,
And we're not still, we close the books every year, but those books end up closing usually around October. It's not that they've been left open for 40 months. We haven't had a year-end close. We close our books every year, but they always end up exceeding the due date that's set in statute.
Okay, are there any other questions from any, is this regarding the same thing, Director Kelty? Because I think it explains.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for telling me. So, going back to what Supa brought up, I mean, it's 40 months. That's years, you know what I'm saying? That's a long time to actually complete an audit that you've been asked to do several times. And that's not the only one. You've got one in here that was started in 2024, and it's supposed to be done in 2025, and then now you've just asked at the very end of December for another 6 months on that one. You've got 4 other audits. One is 75 months behind, 39 months behind, 27 months behind, and 12 months behind. So out of your department, you're behind on all these audits are what we can utilize for your financial well-being. Like these are all financial reports. I'm sorry, no, I apologize. Yeah, the last 4 were IT security systems reports. What we need is a body to be able to see these audits, to be able to make correct decisions for your department. When you're 40 months, years behind in doing just an audit, you know, that to me is really unacceptable. When can we expect all of these audits to be done by your department?
Director Giordano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative, so the audits are done. They're now still ongoing. They're wrapped. That's why there were findings. At the findings, we have our responses to these. As you'll note, the outstanding items are what are still left open. And as you noted, most of them are IT findings. These apply across all departments of the state, higher education, and community colleges that were responsible for making sure that we have assurance for when it comes to financial IT security in those, which we do work with in consultation with OIT. As far as the year-end close, we would be happy to partner with any member here, and you in particular, if you think it would be worth working on changing the auditing closing date timeline, because that's probably the reason why we have the longest audit finding, as I mentioned earlier.
Thank you, Director, and I invite you, Rep. Kelty, to take this offline and engage with the department. Is there anybody else here within the committee who would like to ask questions of this group? Okay, Senator Liston, no? Okay, well, thank you all for coming today, I appreciate it, and we'll see you in committees sometime.